we stopped last time, we were talking about atheism and agnosticism. And we watched the video the first time of the lady who was in medical school. She grew up Roman Catholic, and then she became evangelical, and after that she kind of walked away and left the faith. Now this time we're going to be discussing other case studies. We're going to kind of dig in more, and we're going to maybe divide into two groups, kind of as you kind of try to discern, or even like we're not too big, so we can actually do one group and we see maybe it'll be faster that way. I think by way of introduction, we could actually continue our discussion here and talk about what the atheistic worldview believes. What do they believe in exactly? So they have obviously a conception of who God is or lack thereof. There is a God or there is no God. In atheism, they don't believe that there's a God. Agnosticism would say we don't know if there's a God. And there's no way for you to find out that there's a God. They also have every atheist have heard of Jesus Christ. Everybody has heard of Jesus Christ at this point. In 2022 of the year of our Lord, everybody has heard of who Jesus Christ is. Now, they know of Jesus Christ. They don't know Jesus Christ. You get my drift? So they know of him, so they have some sort of opinion, or they have maybe even heard, maybe they had an evangelical in their family or a friend. So they know what Jesus claimed to be, and they reject that claim. Another is, do they have a foundational text or source of authority? We are Christians, so we believe the Bible. The Bible is the ultimate authority for faith and practice. It formulates our worldview, and it grounds us in God's world. It tells us what to believe about the world and what to reject. Obviously, nothing in God's word will contradict God's revelation through natural revelation, natural theology. So the Bible will never tell you that the earth is flat, or the Bible will never say that there is no such thing as gravity, and so on. The Bible doesn't contradict reality, is what I'm trying to say. The Bible doesn't contradict itself also. The Bible, that's why we come to this doctrine we call the Bible is inerrant, means it is without error. It is infallible, meaning it cannot err, it cannot even make a mistake, because it is God's word. Now, so we have the foundational text, that source of authority. The source of authority is God, and God revealed himself through his word. For an atheist, we talked about that, is really autonomous. They are the source of authority. And so we're going to kind of dig into more into that. They also have a conception of what do they believe about human nature. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it neutral? So, for example, we're going to talk about Islam later. Islam would think humans by nature are neutral, actually. Basic human problem. What is the problem? Is there a problem that we face in the world? If so, what's the solution to the problem? And finally, life after death. Is there life after death, or there isn't? Right? So this kind of fleshes out the four pillars we talked about, right? Origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. Why are we here? Where do we come from first? Why are we here? How we ought to live, and where is this all gonna end? Where and when and what's going to happen? Okay, so what do they believe about God? Well, they believe that God doesn't exist. And agnostics believe it is impossible to find out whether God does exist. That's not a thing. They're not only why do I, by the way, group agnostics and atheists? Because agnostics are not really neutral on the topic. They're not saying, I just don't know, and they're being like humble about it. No, what they're really implying is that you cannot know. That's why they're agnostic. You cannot know. So they're really atheists. In the final analysis, they are atheists because they deny that there is a God that is knowable, that God exists and He will reveal Himself. And so it's almost a small little step to saying there's no God. It's really not a big leap. And after that, by the way, when you press an agnostic, he will end up being an atheist, actually. When you start pressing him, hold on a second, you're saying you cannot know? Well, you talk about what we said earlier in the first session, cosmological argument, which basically the argument from nature. How come there is something instead of nothing? How can we explain the transcendental argument? So how can we explain the law of logic or the laws of non-contradiction, right? How to, when we said the example, I am here and I'm not here at the same time. That makes no sense. There's that transcendent law that tells us this makes no sense. A moral argument, when you tell him, so do you believe there's such things as wrong and some things are right? And if they are wrong and right, are they transcendent? Are they above culture, or are they created by culture? Right? So these are other arguments, and so on and so forth. There are many other arguments. So once you start to press an agnostic, he will eventually kind of revert to atheism, actually. So that's where you. What do they believe about Jesus Christ? Well, they believe that he's a mere man. I mean, at this point, most people who have a little bit of knowledge, you don't have to be like a scholar, you will acknowledge that there was such a man called Jesus of Nazareth, that many Christians, since then until now, they called him the Christ, the Messiah, right? Now, you can obviously take this and say, what did Jesus claim to be? That's a different story, but the point is that they would know that there is a Jesus, and he's. They heard from what they heard. It seems like he's an upright guy, a stand-up guy, like his eyes. He's not too bad. That's what they think of Jesus. Foundational text or source of authority. There is no written text. There's no particular text. There's definitely some text that you should, like the lady was saying, the God Delusion by Dawkins, or the God of the Gaps, so on and so forth. There's so many other books that it was written by different famous atheists, and so they would constitute that as the theologians of the atheistic worldview, if you will. They're the ones who are articulating the atheistic worldview. Oftentimes, by the way atheism is posited, it is oftentimes posited against something. It is against theism. It's atheism. So it often feels like it has to debunk theism. Theism means believing in the existence of God. From theos, God. So theism, those who believe in the existence of God. And so oftentimes these books are written to debunk any argument for God's existence. So what is the source of authority? We talked about this last week. We said that when they were to talk about, for example, morality, they brought in an expert in bioethics. Right? So because they don't know how to find morality. So there has to be an expert for that. So they bring a bioethicist from the university next door and tell us, should we do so and so? Oh yeah, I think this is a great thing and we should do it. So hold on a second. Based on who? Who says that this is good or this is bad, this is right or wrong? Well, science. Didn't you hear? He's a bioethicist. He has a PhD in bioethics. And as a result, because of his degrees, he has been ordained by science or academia to be able to be an expert to speak into the topic at hand. You heard it said for sure, especially the past 2 years, why should I do this? Because of science. How many times did you hear that? A lot. I mean, if any time this is really, you feel it in your everyday life, is the past 2 years. Because of science. And those who reject science is basically blasphemy in our culture. You rejecting science, you are rejecting the ultimate authority. But there's a problem with that. Science cannot tell you what ought to happen. Science can only tell you what is. It tells you there is gravity. It tells you there's a disease. There's a lot of people are sick. It doesn't tell you how should you deal with that disease and what is a humane way of dealing with a disease. Or, it doesn't tell you that. So someone can look at the exact same set of data. A lot of people are sick and they will cost you $52 million to help them out. Well, here's a scientific equation. What if I kill every single one, every last one of the 52 million, of the, 10,000 people who are sick? Well, I can save $52 million. Or, I don't have to kill them. I just leave them be. I shut the door. I save $52 million. And if they die, it's the survival of the fittest. Whoever is most fit, he will survive. If they're not fit, well, you know what? It's fate. Well, who's to say this is wrong or this is right? How can someone stand up and say, whoa, 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 dude, are you out of your mind? Why am I out of my mind? Why is this such an outrageous proposal? Well, we don't know. There's no ought. It just tells you what is. So anyone can interpret the data as they think is right, based on ultimately their sense of morality. Reason really comes back to similar things. So they are employing reason to analyze the data that the science will bring. By the way, there's a great book if you want to know more about this new religion that we're in called Scientism. Scientism. There's a book out on that, so come to me after. I will share with you a link for that book. It's a great book. Okay. Obviously, this is an elevation. Who's behind the science and reason?
It's God Himself.
It is God Himself. He is the one who actually made science possible. If everything is haphazard, then we cannot guarantee that tomorrow will be like today. But because we know that there is a God who is transcendent, who upholds the whole universe by the word of His power, we know that tomorrow is going to be like today. That tomorrow will not just going to start floating. Right? Because if everything is haphazard, there is no guarantees. Right? Not because 100,000 years or whatever they claim has been the norm, it is guaranteed for tomorrow. They can't guarantee that. Those who believe in evolution and so on, they cannot guarantee that. They assume something. So what we would say that they are stealing from theism. They're grounding their reason in what God has actually given. But they're denying God. They're denying His attributes, His eternal power, like Romans 1 would tell us. And so ultimately, for them, it's not God who's behind reason and the ability for us to reason and the scientific method He has given us through the mind He has granted us. It's man. Man is the man of reason. Man is the man of science. God doesn't give man anything. Man is the ultimate source behind these things. He's the source of authority. So that's really the point. Human nature. Well, secular humanists view that mankind is basically good. And so we're good. We don't need a savior. There's no need for a God, or you just die, and if you're a good person, people remember you well. That's it. Obviously here, so though this belief isn't necessary to be an atheist or agnostic, because a lot of atheists, or even agnostics, they would actually say, you'll be in a better place. If your uncle passed away, your atheist friend will come and say, man, I'm sure she's in a better place. You're sure? Show me the scientific journal for that. Okay, here first case study. It's we're going to discuss origin and meaning. Scientific Sam. Someone will read. We'll have
Amala.
Amala?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amala.
After years of self-study in philosophy, religion, and science, I finally came to the conclusion that there are no gods and there have never been any gods. The whole God thing has been nothing more than an invention of humans looking for answers to the fact of existence. As I look back on the whole process, I wonder why it took me so long to reach this obvious conclusion. I believe that the acceptance of the fact of evolution was a deciding factor in the conclusion that gods did not and do not exist. Evolution and a natural evil in the world settle the matter for me. There are still questions that science may not be able to answer. I still wonder why there is something instead of nothing. The complexity of life still awes me. I miss the comfort of old legends, but in the end, I prefer the truth instead of the lies and falsehoods, however cold the truth may be.
I'm gonna look, pay close attention to what he says, because this is first case. Well, it's a part of one case. This is one guy who claims that science is what led him to be an atheist, evolution namely. You're going to see another quote from another person. The main prophet of atheists, Richard Dawkins. And we're going to compare what scientific Sam, this is a hypothetical person, by the way, this is a hypothetical person, but this is very obviously what people claim, and what Richard Dawkins would say. So, you good with this? We're going to come back to it. Richard Dawkins. Go ahead, brother. You go.
In the universe of life, physical forces, and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt. Other people are going to get lucky. And you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is. At the bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, and no other good. Nothing but blind, pitiless. And pitiless indifference. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is. And we dance to its music.
Okay. Now, most atheists would say this. This is what people would speak, how people would speak. But this is really what atheism is. But most people do not speak. Some do. I actually met some who actually are consistent and honest enough in their line of thinking, having the clarity and honesty really to say this, because they actually thought through it. But most people are this. And this is already, by the way, someone who had a considerable amount of thought, but not to this level. So, now here's some questions for you. Identify the contradiction between Scientific Sam and Richard Dawkins. The contradictions. Wow.
The contradiction that the one contradiction that I see is that Sam says that admits that there's evil. Evil is a thing. But
Yes.
Richard Dawkins says that admits that there is no evil, along with purpose and design kind of thing, right?
Yes.
And so with Sam, I would like to ask him, how do you know what evil is, right? Because if there's no design or purpose, then what you call evil can be completely different than what I call evil.
That's
And
right.
if that's true, then it's my word against yours, right? So you can't say that there is evil unless you say that there's things that I personally don't like, but may be something that someone else likes
That's
or
right.
doesn't like.
Also say that scientific Sam is in a position that everything is explained through science, while Richard Dawkins thinks that there's certain things that we just don't know. And Richard Dawkins also introduced a concept of God. It's not necessarily mentioned in scientific Sam.
Which is what?
Because Richard Dawkins says that everything is happening based on luck,
Yes.
things on luck. So, and again, if it's a scientific view, he cannot explain where luck comes from. So how can you be scientific if you cannot explain what luck comes from?
Okay.
But I find that Richard Dawkins is more into the unknown, while scientific Sam is more into the explain, more or less like materialism.
Yes.
of
He
things.
found answers.
Yeah.
Richard Dawkins is saying no. Well, he actually kind of found answers, but his answers are not an answer.
Yeah, I just don't know.
It's
It
just
is what it is.
It is what it is. That's what it is. It is what it is. There are no answers. Basically, Dawkins would be, there are no answers, quit looking for one. Sam seems like he have found atheism, or atheism found him. Whatever, how someone, he found God, people mocking Christians, he found Jesus. That scientific Sam found science, in his mind, answering all his questions. To your point, he is discerning, or is asserting that there is such thing as evil. There's a problem with that. Why? Why there's a problem when you are an atheist, like scientific Sam, to assert there's such thing as evil? What's wrong with that?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Because evil assumes there's an objective standard of right and wrong.
Uh-huh.
But with no God, there's no objective standard.
No.
It's all subjective.
That's
There's no
correct.
logic.
Yeah.
It becomes subjective
Yes,
to each and every one of us.
absolutely. Anyone else? It's one more thing.
It's changing.
Yeah, what was the question again?
Identify the contradiction between them two.
Oh,
So your point was, he asserted there's such thing as evil. And you're saying that makes no sense. Because if there is no God, then there is no such thing as evil. That's fair. But how does this then contradict Dawkins?
Dawkins says that there is no evil.
The universe observes properties.
No,
What the universe we observe, has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at the bottom no design. Like no one designed the universe. No purpose is attached to no design. No evil.
And no other good.
No other good. You cannot, he's smart enough to realize, to be consistent with his position. He cannot say there's such thing as good or evil. But when someone is inconsistent with their position, they would say something like this. Because they're assuming something underneath this. What else?
would you say that Richard sits on the fence?
No, he's not sitting on the fence. He's just telling you.
No, but he's not saying either or.
No, he's saying there is no such thing as
he's
evil.
saying no.
There's no such thing as evil. So when he's protesting and saying there's natural evil, he says, "What's that?"
Yeah.
That's what Dawkins is saying. What's that? What is evil? Define it. Oh, children die. You mean it's called life? That's not called evil. It's just life. Pillaging and raping. What about murdering? That's just. What would Dawkins say to that? When you say, Dr. Dawkins, there are people murdering people outside. What would he say?
So,
Well, he would say this is outrageous.
Pitiless indifference.
Huh?
Pitiless
oh, what would it? Because if he's trying to be consistent with worldview, it'd be like,
Yes.
so what? But his God-given intellect would revolt at that.
Of course, he would say this is problematic. We should make a society that will stop this.
I guess he's
But
saying,
why?
yes.
Who cares? Yes. But he would argue if you want to have a productive society, that everybody is reaching their optimal good and optimum society, you have to have some sort of order. So reason grants us that. Right? But then, you will obviously press it hard and you say, so why do we condemn that man? He will say, because he is counter to the society that we collectively have decided to make together, an orderly society. That's his argument. But ultimately, when you press it even further, and you say, but hold on a second, but is that man wrong? Well, he's wrong in the sense that he's going against our society. But he's not, so he's not objectively wrong. So if our society have decided that, like in the movie Purge, that one day in the year, that's a movie, that people can murder people and these crimes will not be brought against you in the court of law. One day in the year only. 24 hours. Huh?
I said, was there anybody left on
Right? So that's one day. You would ask Dawkins, is that okay? He would say, if the society agrees, he's like, I don't think that's optimal. I mean, he probably would say, I can make an argument that this is not an optimal way to build a society. However, if a society agrees this is the way, then there is nothing intrinsically, objectively wrong with that. Why? Because he's like, I personally, even if I would exist in that society, he would say, Dawkins would say, I wouldn't partake in such behaviors. They would tell him, so why do these other people partake in such behaviors? You know, what would he say? The answer is right in front of you.
The question is, why would they?
Yes.
Not him?
Yes.
Some people talk about interest, like some natural studying, natural interest in building society. Lions don't have a moral, but they have an interest, survival point
Yes.
to get an organized society.
That's right.
You know.
Dead on. But notice what he said. There's an interest for us to build a society. That's correct. But what also he's implying, some people have an inclination towards that. Other people have an inclination towards something else. And what would he call that?
DNA? Neither knows nor cares.
Yes. DNA. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is. And we dance to its music. At the bottom, you are just living out your DNA. Well, it means, because what is a DNA? What's inside the DNA?
Program.
Huh?
Sort of a program.
It's a program. It's information. Information about who you are. Your personal tendencies, your the way you would react to certain things. It has the color of your skin, color of your eyes, the tone of your voice, your metabolism, the way your body would respond to stimuli of various sorts. That's what DNA. It has many things, obviously. But some of these things. So he would say, well, the DNA will decide how you would live your life. Some people will be prone to addiction, right? It's a fact.
Yeah.
Some people are more prone to addiction. They would be more tempted to, and they would fall into alcoholism. Others, they can drink alcohol, but they would never be prone to it. And then the doctor would tell you, do you have anyone in your family who has been an alcoholic? Why they ask that? Because
Your chances, it's in your DNA.
it's in your DNA. Some people are prone to disposed to certain not only behavior, but also even diseases based on their family history. That's why family history is important when you go to the doctor. Did your mother have cancer before? Did your father have this or that? Right? Why? Because because DNA dictates how things function in your body too, when it comes down. So that's what he would say. That's why people are acting this way. So there's nothing really intrinsic, it's just they are just dancing to the music of the DNA. Now, here's one last thing. Did you notice one last thing? Yes, we talked about evil, talked about this, and there's one more thing.
Well, Sammy's got a question. I still don't know why there's something instead of nothing.
He's
Yes,
still searching.
And the other guy, just never mind.
Dawkins,
Yeah, good.
Richard.
Yeah, he says, it just says, I evacuates the question, or I don't know what's his attitude for it, but he evacuates it.
That's right.
I don't want to question that. It's there.
That's correct.
No question.
That's correct.
That's one thing.
That's right.
Well, anyway.
That's a pretty good. So in his argument of origin is exactly that. One more thing. I don't know. You guys missed it. It seems. He said natural evil. It's better to use this one. He said natural evil, but he said also another word that is very interesting.
Evolution.
No. Something about worldview.
What's the line? Truth.
Truth.
I prefer the truth instead of lies and falsehoods.
Lies of falsehood. However cold the truth may be. What does that imply?
God himself. Because God is truth. Apart from him, there's nothing to be true. Well, he reveals truth to us.
That's right, but what does that mean still?
He
And stand-
believes in the truth.
He believes in that there is somewhat.
There's a
Absolute
power.
truth.
What did you say?
Absolute.
Absolute truth.
Yeah.
He believes in something that is something objective, actually. You're like, hold a second. Where did that objective truth come from? Because it is not evolution. It is not material. Where is truth? Show me. Let's go to a scientific lab. Show me truth. Materialism doesn't give you truth. Truth, a concept that doesn't exist in a materialistic universe. Okay, next question. What are the implications of Dawkins' quote? Sorry, if it was true. Bad grammar. What is the implication? By the way, I've seen this before and I was supposed to correct it, I forgot. What are the implications of Dawkins' quote, if it was true? It would what?
Be fight all over the place.
Yes.
For
It would be chaos.
Yeah.
But it means that each and every one of us will become God.
Yes. And there's a problem with that. Why? Because if everybody is autonomous, then eventually you will have what? Not an orderly society. You will have a malleable society. That means every generation will decide what is good 10 years ago. Guess what? It's a crime today. It's kind of happening even now.
Yes, it is.
Like the what we call hate speech 20, 30 years ago, it was specific things. Now it became broader, a lot broader. What constitutes a hate speech? I mean, talking about gender, this is just because a lot is happening all over the place. Now, if it's something that is basic, and as a matter of fact, someone would argue materialistic, this is even scientific. But remember, when we're talking about postmodernism, postmodernism even disregards materialistic evidence, even because materialism, there are some things that are fixed in reality. But postmodernism says everything is an interpretation. You can interpret these things in a binary way, but we should deconstruct a binary understanding of the world. And they posit that the world in which we live should now accommodate interpretation of different truths based on people's experiences. That really contradicts the materialistic evolutionary kind of worldview. That's why you would find Dr. Jordan Peterson oftentimes on your side, even though he's not a Christian. Why? Because he's a materialist, an evolutionary psychologist. That's his domain. And so he believes that if some things are fixed, that's how we know things. But why is he an ally of Christians all of a sudden? Because Christians too believe that some things were fixed. The difference between us is that he believes it just came to be by chance that these things are fixed. We believe that there's a God who created the world. That's the difference. Obviously, he will have no grounding for truth because, like we said again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but because when he's asserting truth in reality, how could it be objective if everything is material? Because at some point there was nothing, and now there's something. So at some point, this objective truth was no truth. For example, before there was any human beings, someone could look at the universe and say, hey, there are no human beings. Would that be true? Then that's a problem. You understand, right? Because if logic exists before the material universe, then there is someone who is transcending the universe. That before the universe, someone can say, oh wow, there is no universe. You know, there is no matter. Would that be still true? Yes. That means if that statement is always true, whether there is a material universe or there isn't a material universe, that means this law of logic is a precondition. It existed before materialism. And within the evolutionary framework, evolutionary worldview, that cannot be. It just is not consistent. So the implication of Dawkins' quote is horrific, actually. If that is all what the universe is, you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, right? In people some people are going to get hurt. Other people are going to get lucky. What is law? From where is that happening? But never mind, he says, and you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. Then why do we cry? Why humanity have been crying through the corridors of time, as it were, saying, where is justice? We want justice. Why when something unjust happens to us, we say, wrong, wrong. And we demand, as a society and as people, we say, this needs to be rectified. Why? Because ultimately, it is innate to us. We want to see justice. So it makes no sense for us to say, and you won't find any rhyme or reason nor any justice. This actually does not correspond to reality. It's not true. Why? Because we can find in us and every human being that ever existed a desire for asking questions, reasons why, seeking justice, seeing design and purpose, understanding the concept of evil before anyone, before the modern, postmodern era. All throughout history, people took these things for granted. It was innate. As a matter of fact, even those who deny such things, when evil happens to them, they start questioning all of their existence. They start demanding justice and praising good according to them. Another question. If Dawkins is correct, how do atheists derive from their worldview meaning to life or morality for life?
Themselves.
That's it. Themselves. Or whatever the government says, the government of the day says. So the government, therefore, becomes what? God. Government becomes God. If the government said so, then that's what we do. If the government said no, then that's what we don't do. Why? Why are you thinking about this? They're almost having faith in government. Right? They're submitting to government with suspending the reason why. Because once they engage reason, once they start to question, why does the government do so and so, you say, wow, ha-ha! Why are you saying this is wrong or right? Says who? Because he is the same guy who a few months ago, before this election, he would say, well, this is the way it is, bro. That's just, our society, we came together, we decided this is right, and another government comes into, and then kind of like removes that law, or puts another law, and says, oh, that's unjust. You're like, hold on a second, bro. You just told me 4 months ago that we just do what we as a society decide. Why you mad? Because he believes that there is something that transcends the government. And then you say, so what is that? Who is that? It's him. Me. I transcend government. So if the government does what I like, I give it the stamp of approval. If the government doesn't do what I like, then I protest against it. Last question. How can atheism explain empirical constants? We actually discussed that. Laws of logic, the concept of objective truth, or even the universal experience of beauty and love. Where do such non-material objective realities or notions come from if all that exists is the material universe without a transcendent creator? How do they, in their minds, explain this? Their objective laws of logic, like the one I just mentioned, about before the universe, someone can say, hey guys, there is no universe. So that means the law of logic does not depend on materialism. Does not depend that there's a something, that there's people there, that a society even exists. It doesn't matter. A logic will always be logical. And if so, how can they explain these things? That's a question for you. What's the answer?
I think they believe in their own intelligence, so reasoning and things belongs to them.
Yes.
Sort of a natural kind of ways. Not sure they really explain that, though. I don't believe they have that. But as far as I
Whatever they believe.
Yes, that's true. But then when you start to explain what we just give an example of the law of logic and concept of objective truth, like Scientific Sam said, and you press them on the issue, then how will they explain these things?
They either won't.
Huh?
I think they either won't. They admit that they can't, or they just say evolution did it.
They will just say they can't, if they're honest. That's really the answer. They can't. They can't answer this question. That's our session for today. We're done.